Hi, today we are here for the Biostatics part 2. So mainly we are seeing what are the errors we can see in research methodology. So errors are of mainly two types, type 1 and type 2. Where type 1 error is a false positive conclusion while a type 2 error is a false negative conclusion. So that is the difference of type 1 and type 2 error which we are used mostly in statistics part. So while checking whether it will come under type 1 and type 2, we will help the statistically we will decide the uncertainty whether we can manage the risk or not, or we can avoid the errors or not in hypothesis testing. So first we are thinking about type 1 error. Means we will reject the null hypothesis when it is actually true. So in some textbook we can see H. So type 1 error means we are concluding that results are statistically significant in reality. So these errors can be happen by chance or because of the unrelated factors. So the risk. So because of this, some risk we will go because of this error. So we will call it as insignificance level, either alpha. From that level, we are getting this error, right? So that's a value you set at the beginning of your study to assess the probability of the result of p-value. So in the type 1 error, the significant error or level is usually set at 0.05, or we will tell in 5%. Means your result only have a 5% chance of occurring or less if the null hypothesis actually true. And as we already discussed, these are the two type of error, type 1 and type 2. So we are telling it's a hypothesis. We are telling when this type 1 and type 2 will occur. So the type 1 error we already told it's false positive, whereas it is in that case we will call it as rejected. In type 2 error we will call it as its probability is 1 minus beta. And in type 1, true case, not rejected, we will tell it's a correct decision. So it's a truly negative. So whichever alpha showing the type 1, so the probability is 1 minus alpha. Whereas not rejected in case of type 2, it is type 2 error. It's false negative. So the opposite thing is happening. So the probability is beta. Now we are going to discuss about what is the type 1 error rate. Means we told it's a null hypothesis. So rate means we have to add in distribution curve. So this is the distribution curve. We already discussed what is normal distribution curve in the previous. If you have it out, you can see that thing. So we are seeing what are the curve below show the probability. So null hypothesis distribution this thing. So the type 1 error is alpha. So at the tail end, the shaded area, this thing represent alpha. It's a, also called the critical region in statistics. So if the result fall in this critical region of alpha part, they are considered statistically significant. So we can tell the null hypothesis rejected. This is the type 2 error distribution pattern. So we will call it as alternative hypothesis distribution pattern. So as we already told, the type 2 error rate we are representing by beta. So type 2 error means not rejecting the null hypothesis when it is actually false, like that we are not rejecting. Instead, this means failing to conclude there was an effect when there actually was. So this type 2 error we can tell it is inversely related to the statistical power of our study, and if the power is high, the lower the probability of making a type 2 error. So we will tell like that statistical power is equal to 1 minus beta. Now we are discussing about what is the trade-off or difference between type 1 and type 2 error. The type 1 and type 2 error rates influence each other because each level or type 1 error rate affect the statistical power, which is inversely related to the type 2 error rate. So If the lower significant level decreases, the type 1 error risk, but it will increases. If the error significant level decreasing means type 1, there is an increased risk in type 2. And if we are thinking about the power of errors, if the power of errors decreases in type 2, if so, we can expect an increase in type 1 error risk. Means both the errors are interrelated. So in the previous thing we discussed in separate type 1 and type 2, this is the combination. So in first type 1 alpha, this is the distribution curve, beta, this is the distribution curve in type 2. So in type 1 we will call it as null hypothesis H0 distribution curve, which is represented by this blue color, and this alternative or H1 distribution we can see in type 2 error. This is the distribution rate in type 2 beta, and the significant part is 1 minus beta. Now coming to the practical side of type 1 and type 2 error, for statisticians, type 1 error is usually worse. In practical term, when we are telling either the type of type 2, whichever error is occurred, it will depend on the research context. So we have to find out which one may be the error in our thing. If type 1 error means mistakenly going against the main statistical assumption, so we have to, if type 1 error occurs like that, we have to go to new policies, practices or treatment that are inadequate or in based on resources. So we have to find out which error may happen in our research context. By this we are concluding the concept. So I think this may be clear on the concept of what is the difference between or where we can see type 1 and type 2 error, and what is the pattern of both the errors. Thank you for watching.